Fighter jets. Giant hornets. Can they fly? Yes, of course they can. Eggs. 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 Can they fly? No, absolutely not.
Hey, Kevin,
Yeah, Daryl.
what do you reckon about flying?
Oi, Tess! Stop bloody bouncing your sister into the coral tree! Bloody caviar. Sorry. What were you saying?
I was just talking about flying.
Oh, right. Why?
Oh, I don't know. I just think it might be really interesting to see the world from that angle.
Wait, are you saying you want to fly?
Well, maybe?
But you're an egg.
Yeah, I know, but I could wear a helmet or something.
Oi, Tess! Stop putting the bloody decorative pebbles up your nostrils! Look, Daz, I just don't think eggs are meant to fly, mate. Ow! Tess, what did I just say?
Oopsie.
Flight Simulator, where you can fly anywhere you can dream of, as long as you are not an egg. Please verify that you are not an egg.
Melanie, do you reckon I can have a go at flying your kite?
I don't know, Daryl. Isn't it illegal for eggs to fly or something?
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I wouldn't actually be flying myself. I would just be, holding your
Oi,
kite,
babes.
which is-
Is this egg bothering you? Because I'll end him if he is.
No, sorry, I was just...
Oh my god, that's like so romantic.
Melanie, your kite.
Oh, wow.
All right, Humpty Dumpty. Do you know why you're here?
I tried to fly.
You try to fly. And do you know what happens when eggs try to fly?
They have fun.
This is the third time this year you've tried something like this. What's going on, Daryl? Look, you're a good guy, Daryl. I'm gonna let you off with a warning. But this is the last time, okay? You should really get some help, mate.
Egg. A vessel for housing tiny embryonic life forms that have evolved over millions of years to live in complete symbiotic harmony with one another. But can eggs fly? Yes, I think they can.
Hey folks, so what does the future hold for real-time technology in 2022? From transmedia marketing to the metaverse, we take a look at some of the emerging trends that will shape the year ahead and the stats that told the tale of 2021. Dive in on the Unreal Engine feed. Included in those trends is an explosive growth in virtual fashion, so if you've given some thought to becoming a digital fashion designer, we've got you covered. Learn how to create virtual fashion using the same tools as Burberry, Balenciaga, and Gary James McQueen by checking out our free Careers in Fashion course via Unreal Online Learning. The original The Oregon Trail is a classic. For generations, it served as an iconic education game. Now, roughly 40 years after its release, Gameloft Brisbane has modernized the experience for a new generation of gamers. Jump into your Stagecoach and explore how they revamped the classic game's art style, implemented more accurate history, and better represented Indigenous people while staying authentic to the series. Ever wonder what the inside of your body looks like after a COVID-19 vaccination? Well, look no further. The team at pioneering medical animation studio Random 42 used Unreal Engine to create a short film that shows it all. Get under the microscope with their amazing medical animations over on the feed. Dashing over to our community spotlights this week, here is Atoshi no Shima from Mamoru Kanu and Nanako Kanu. Exhibited at the Tohoku University of Art and Design graduate exhibition, the game tells a story about 4 masked men who, when they come together to make an offering on the mountaintop, cause the island to be reborn. Watch the full video on their YouTube channel. And from Aditya Asthana, a lovely 1930s Shanghai theater. Created as part of their mentorship project at Think Tank, they built all the assets and materials aside from a few decals. Take a seat in the grand auditorium and see more of their scene over on their ArtStation page. And lastly, we'll leave you all with the delightful Scoot Scoot from Jay. You'll explore and race around in iconic Japanese locations on your own customizable bikes. Take on complex courses, open world races, and even hectic delivery missions. Wishlist Scoot Scoot now on Steam. Thanks for watching this week's news and community spotlight.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and today I have 3 lovely guests here with me. I have Lois and Matthew, the 2 co-founders of iTherapy, as well as Justin Patterson, the lead XR engineer from Alara Systems. So, Lois, Matthew, would you guys like to tell us a little bit more about your project?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd love to actually. So we Matthew and I are speech language pathologists, and we're certified autism specialists, and we work with kids on the autism spectrum. And we're also assistive technology specialists. And what that means is that if a child has a challenge doing something, and in our case it's communication, so it'd be speaking or putting words together, we actually work to come up with the technology to help them talk or to talk for them. And I think probably the most famous example of that is something like Dr. Stephen Hawking, who he couldn't talk, so he had the box and it spoke for him. Working with kids with autism, we realized that, you know, a third of them can't or have a really hard time talking. So the solutions that were out there didn't really work for kids with autism. So we started, this is about 10 years ago, searching, well, what does work? What can we do? Most of the technology was decades old, and our business model is to look to the future. What is the future? What are people using right now that our kids could actually use too? So that's when we came across Epic and the mega grant. So we created this amazing technology that kind of is so timely, because it not only accomplishes the goals we set out to, which was to help kids learn to talk, help them learn to read, and to help them with social communication, but it's so timely because nowadays, where everyone's face is covered with a mask and you cannot see their mouth moving or their expressions, we have uncovered that for our students, our clients. And now, as they're learning to talk, they can actually see, how does the mouth move? What do the expressions look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, that was an issue that I hadn't even thought of previous to us discussing it, was the fact that this probably does make learning these micro expressions and stuff significantly more difficult now that half of our faces are covered all of the time.
Yeah, there's new research out that says there is a 350% increase in speech and language disorders over the past 2 years. So it's so incredibly timely, because you can really focus in on only the things you want to. The mouth, how does the mouth look when you talk? And those are the cues that the kids are missing, and especially kids with autism, because they tend not to like to look at faces in the first place. So it's kind of, double hard for them. Now, when they do look at the face, there's a mask there, so they're not picking up the cues that they need.
And then here's the other piece about that too. I mean, this is just how it's all compounded by that, is that a lot of the sounds that are difficult to make are consonants. So a T sound, an S sound, an F sound. And when you have a mask on, because they're high frequency sounds, the mask reduces the volume of them, and even changes the frequency signature of the consonants. So when what they're hearing, it's different from actually how it's meant to be perceived and produced. So not only can they not see how the articulation movements look, but the sound is distorted, the signal's distorted that they're hearing. And we have people verifying this and working in preschools and telling me this and telling us this, from the front lines. So it goes in line with, unfortunately, with our research, that there are a lot of delays as a result of the mask mandates, which it is what it is. But the solution we came up with can help with that, because it can model all these things we can zoom in on the mouth. You can repeat the sounds over and over. And this is something that's really interesting, is we can take individual speech sounds and model just those. So just an F sound or a T sound or an O sound, which is how you learn any skill. You have to watch it being demonstrated. And then there's a neural system in your brain, your mirror neuron system, that when you watch someone perform something, it lights up the parts on your brain called your motor strip that are activated when you actually perform those skills. So now we can help with some of that by using Unreal Engine to model these things.
Yeah, absolutely, which is just incredible. I love seeing the technology used in a capacity like this, because we hear about a lot of things like virtual production and games and a lot of entertainment industry sort of things, which are fun. Obviously, lots of a good time there, but it's also good to be able to see it used for a very practical and helpful and educational format like this. I do have kind of a question in regards to that, though. I believe this is the second version of Inner Voice, right? What led you guys to making this version using Unreal?
Correct. This is our Inner Voice Unreal. It's our second version. The first version was we made it on iOS platform, Apple. The second version is on Android platform. The technology we used was not able to reproduce precise articulation. It took a picture or a photo and then it animated the photo, but we did not get the precise articulation that we wanted, or the precise micro expressions that we wanted. We just were unable to do it with that type of reproduction. It did let the kids see what they would look like if they were talking, and it did draw their attention. It was fun. A lot of times, some of the older technology got abandoned because it's just not fun. Why would you use it? It was work. So putting a picture on there and animating it was fun, and it brought in everyone from their environment because everyone thought it was funny and cool and gave them something to talk about. But what we really wanted to do was demonstrate the precise articulation, the precise movements when you make an expression. That was a key piece that was missing from number one. And we're like, how can we do this? We really did try to do it with the photo. We couldn't. You can do it. And we all know that because we've seen like I think they call them the deep fakes, where they take someone's photo and make them say something else. But this is on the fly. This is generated from text to speech, which is something completely novel. So our students will type something and then their avatar will say it. So it's not something that is a pre-recorded message that has a precise articulation. It's generated, and they can say anything they want. So we thought that was really cool. And, Justin can attest to this. We use so many technologies, and it took such a long time to really match the articulation to the text to speech. And some of the technology, quite literally, there's only a couple little spaces. It still really is not there. However, 99% of it is accurate. So those two little spaces, we can hear it and we pick them out and we're like, oh, darn it. Most people can't. They just kind of like mesh over it. But we're super proud of what we were able to do and accomplish.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to add, there's one other reason that we wanted to use the Unreal platform to make a new version is that when we found that when we use the photos, so for example, we take a photo of a young student, and this is a real life experience I had, not all the time, but enough where we started thinking about it, is that we take a picture of the student and then it add basic animations that like eye blinking or head movements and kind of things like that. Well, when some of the kids would see themselves animated or when they would see themselves talk, so some kids would imitate it. Other kids would have an uncanny valley response. So they would get creeped out by it. So they would kind of be like, oh my, what is this? And so by one of the things that we were able to do to kind of get around that is by making these really friendly, but realistic looking avatars that have precise facial expressions and speech articulation. It doesn't create that uncanny valley response, and it's a little bit easier for them to pay attention to the instructional context. The idea is you want to see how you make the speech movements, how you make the facial expressions, not be weirded out by the model. So that was one of the huge benefits of using Unreal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the avatars, personally, I think look great. They're really in that perfect blend of being cartoony enough that they're very approachable. They're very colorful, so they're fun. But like you were saying, there's enough range of motion there that you can actually get, the point of the whole app across. If I know correctly, you can also change the avatars, right? You can customize them.
Yeah. They can. They're literally almost limitlessly modifiable. I mean, you can make them look. The idea is we want them to look like the people who are in the kids' lives who are using them. So, I mean, if you're from, if your family has dark skin, you can make your avatar have dark skin. If you have light skin, you got light hair. Or you can make it look literally any way that you want. So it mimics how the people look around you in your environment or in your culture. So that was another piece that we really tried to emphasize too, is so that it can look familiar, so that it'll attract your attention, not be distracting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to get a little bit further into the tech itself, right? How about, and we can involve Justin a little bit in here as well too. Do you guys mind talking a little bit about what exactly is happening here from start to finish? What are we looking at? What's happening to get this information to the children? And dive a little bit further down that path.
So it's the app itself is available widely on Google Play. Am I going down the right? Am I answering?
Absolutely.
Your question? Okay, so it's on Google Play. Anyone can download it. We kept it extremely. These types of apps are literally $250 and up, and that is that's something parents cannot afford. Matthew and I have sat across the table from many parents, literally, Tina, in tears because they can't afford something that's going to help their child. And so that was a big part of it to us. It's like, well, how do we keep it affordable? We must keep it affordable. So it's on the Google Play Store, and it's on an introductory price of only $4.99. We just wanted it to get out there in people's hands, and we wanted to hear some feedback because we're always looking to update and make things better, better, better. So we put it on for $4.99. You can just go down and you can download it on any, I guess it would be Android device. And just open it up, choose your avatar. We have 2 adults, male, female, and 2 children. And then design them how you want. I find that most of my students actually love to make it look like someone else in their life, usually another student, and they're hysterical when they do it. So right away we have their attention. We're engaging them in something fun that they're going to remember. So they create the eye color, the hair color, the skin color, and the voice. So they get to choose a voice also. And then they just start using it. They can make it say anything they want. They can make it say ridiculous. Many of my kids just start hitting the keyboard because it's fun. It's funny. I think Matthew, we can show a little bit later. There's a portion on it where the eyes follow your finger as you're pointing around, and that's very specific. We did that so that they can learn joint attention. And again, we go into that a little bit later. But after they get done having their fun and created their avatar, now they like it. There's no abandoning it. Now we can show them how to use it in a communication manner, how to use it to start learning how to talk. Essentially, there's many of our students who can't talk now, but can learn. They don't need to depend on a device their whole lives. Many of our students learn to type, believe it or not. So the keyboard was super important to us, that it would be right at their fingertips. Every child that I introduce to the keyboard just starts randomly typing letters, and then the avatar just randomly starts saying letters, and they just giggle and laugh, and they're on the floor. And then I mold that into typing the word hi. And then they're like amazed. Oh my gosh, I typed H-I and my avatar said hi. And right then and there, it's like you've made a connection for them. And then it's no longer a toy. It's this really fun learning tool. And our kids want to learn. No one has just showed them, the correct way or something that involves them. So now they're on this path where they want to say all these kinds of real words, not just having fun. So it's just a matter of molding it from there. We just take them from there and show them how to use the words in their everyday lives. If they want to go outside, they have to type the word go or hit the button go. We have both the keyboard and the little buttons, so they don't have to, if they cannot type, they can just go to the icon and hit the button that says go. So
that's a cool feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the user interface is really simple. It was intentionally, we tried to make it really simple. So like what Lois is saying, they can type things, they can touch stuff, but literally it leads to them. Most people can figure it out without training, because that's, at least with education, one of the things we've run into just interviewing a lot of teachers or specialists who will use it. Many pieces of technology that are for education, for speech education, and so it takes tons of training to be able to use it. And then one of the results of that is a complex UX UI is abandonment. So that's where Justin really helped with us, is just we wanted to make sure that even though that the user experience is very simple, which was complicated in the background to make it be simple. So maybe you can kind of talk about some of the challenges you had with that, because we wanted it to literally be like someone should be able to use this without any instruction or much instruction.
Right. Yeah, we on the Android device, we made many of the features and the look and feel look like Android, so that you already know what to do. All the buttons are very similar. On the iOS one, we made it look and feel like iOS, so that as you're modifying and editing, there's not this huge manual you have to go through, which is what happens with a lot of the older type devices. There's just tons and tons of learning, and we really wanted to cut down on that because that's a huge pain point for families. The families there, they are so exhausted, so tired, especially now with, where they have the kids at home all day long. The last thing they want to do is learn another thing. So we just made this where essentially the child can pick it up and start playing with it and learn all by themselves.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And I see the chat agrees with that a lot, is that a lot of the apps that have been made previously to help children who are autistic do lack a little bit in the UI. Specifically, it can either be a little distracting or a little confusing. So, Justin, if you'd like to pipe up in here, what were some of the ways that you guys approached tackling that challenge to make sure that this was simple enough for families and children alike to be able to use?
Well, fortunately, we did start with a. Oh, by the way, hi everyone. I'm Justin. I'm the lead arcs engineer at Alara Systems. We do a lot of kind of like medical products in the VR and general XR space, and this is one of our most recent products that we're really proud of, and we're glad to have collaborated with iTherapy to get this guy out the door because Intervoice is a really fantastic product. With that said, I forgot the question. The question was
UX UI.
UX UI. There it is. So the UX and the UI, we fortunately had a really good, solid foundation from the original version of the app. So fortunately, a lot of the research was done for us already. But there was a lot of consideration put into letting users create their own. So it's sort of like a nested folder system where users can specify what icons look like, what those icons should do when you click on them. Do they play a video? Do they trigger the avatar to say some audio? Do you have an image pop up? There's lots of variations of how you can use the folder navigation system, and the considerations that we made were primarily with getting the user able to create their icons as easily as possible, and then allowing the users to be able to modify how the size and layout of those icons so that they can find things as fast as they want, and so that they don't have difficulty clicking on things, because different people have different difficulties with using different interfaces. So reduced complexity was one of our focuses, and just making sure that it was in the spirit of the original application as much as possible when we were developing it. And I think we achieved that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
please.
A fantastic job, because we have quite a few features that we needed to be really simple. There's one that's just as simple as rate control of the speech. If you're just learning how to speak, you want it to be at a little bit slower rate so that they can see the articulation and they can tell where one word begins and the next word ends. Or one word ends and the next one begins. So all those features we have to have in there. And it's like, okay, so we don't want it to be like feature bloat, nothing but feature. So, I mean, Justin was able to like hide those little features in there and keep it kind of a neat, clean
Justin's
look.
team. I'd like to add, but also I wanted to mention, maybe are there any videos you'd like to show, Lois, specifically to kind of showcase some of the product so that we can, when we start digging into the tech discussions, I can kind of point at stuff.
Matthew was the king of the videos here that sent them in. Is there one that just shows it speaking?
Yes, there is a, how about the one that says, well, it shows, we have the social communication one. I believe that was what it was labeled. So it shows the facial expressions, and then it shows, the facial expressions have little, kind of verbalizations that go with them too. So for surprise, he might say like, "Oh my," and so you can see the the actual system we use, a facial action coding system that we referenced, which is an evidence-based way to map out facial expressions universally. And then you can also see the speech articulation as well.
Inner voice allows you to express emotions. Hooray! Oh my! Whoa! Ugh! Grr! Boo-hoo! Hooray!
How a person would look saying those things with those particular emotions, and you really have to massage each of the avatars models, not like physically massage, but virtually massage in modeling to make sure that all the blend shapes, which are how you go from different different of the FACS poses, FACS, facial, what's the full term? Facial
action coding system.
There they are. To make sure that each of those, each movement of the facial action coding system looks good, and you don't got the teeth popping through and all that type of stuff. And blend shapes work really well in Unreal Engine, and they worked really well in this application because you can have a character say something and say it happy, say it sad, and it also influences how the audio comes back when you send it up to Amazon. Comes back if you specified certain pitches and certain tonalities, then it will be sure to ask it like a question or not, like that type of stuff.
So I don't know how many of you, as you saw that short video, kind of imitated the facial expressions as the avatar was going through it. I find myself doing it. If he's smiling, I tend to smile. That's the whole point, is some of our kids, especially on the autism spectrum, don't know how to appropriate show facial expressions and or read them. So we put an avatar in there, and as they're filing through these expressions, the kids are literally imitating them. And we don't even have to tell them to imitate. They just do it. And then we can talk about, if you can put the picture up of the, I think it's in the last image of the little girl, and she looks a little bit angry. Yeah, if you see her, you are, it's sad, yes. You'll see that your face may go a little bit sad. You see her eyebrows and her pout, and then we can talk to the kids about this very specifically. We can point it out and say, look, her eyebrows kind of go up in the middle. And believe it or not, that was a very hard thing to do, because initially we were just trying to say, oh, they should go up a little more, they should go lower, one eyebrow should be askewed from the other. And finally, we just ripped out the facial animation system and just went by what that said. But in the case of trying to teach a child what does sad look like, this is it, and you can point all those things out, and you can get a mirror out and have them try to duplicate it. Right. Also, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, if you were to describe using the facial action coding system, it doesn't mean much to them to say, so here, do movement 1, 4, and 15, for sadness. That helps to design it so it's universal, but for the user, what we really want to do is have, like Lois is saying, have the eyebrows be portrayed so it's universally recognizable, whether you're from, Asia, North America, Africa. It should be universally recognizable.
Absolutely. So I am curious, what inspired the creation of this in the first place? What brought you guys to the point of wanting to make this tool?
Right. I said, I kind of alluded to it in the beginning, that the tools that are currently out there are, they don't really engage our children on the spectrum very much. They are, you push a button and then it says a word, and you don't know where the word is coming from. Our children with autism have sensory challenges. So all of their senses, their vision, their hearing are challenged. That might or might not include being able to localize where sound comes from. So they're just hearing a voice. They don't know if the voice is talking to them or someone else. Many of our kids, you can train them to press a button and get a desired item, something they want, usually a Cheeto or a Lego or something. They can do that. That's not a problem. But going past that has always been a challenge. How do you get them to have a conversation? How do you get them to generate novel things? How do you even engage them to want to use it? Most of the time, you have to encourage them to use it, or say, go get your talker, and you're not going to get this until you use it. And that's not how we speak usually. That's not how you learn to speak. That's how I learn to speak. You have to engage it, make it fun, make it useful. And a lot of our kids on the spectrum can learn to talk for themselves. Well, they can't do that if they can't see the face working. They won't look at me. They won't look at Matthew. They won't look at you or I, because that, again, is a challenge for them, is looking in someone's face, looking at their eyes, looking at their mouth. But they do look at their iPads. So all that being said, we said, what if we can put a face on there that talks? So when they push the button, they can see the mouth move and then connect that the words equal what's coming out of your mouth, equal what's written across the bottom, and then tie all those together. And now we're building real functional language. And they want to learn it. They don't want to be silent. They don't want to be asocial. They really do want to learn and be part of society. You just got to connect the right dots for them. And we've found that once they connect that these words coming out of your mouth are the same words or pictures that are written down here, oh my God, that just like opens a huge door for them. So having the model was imperative for us working with kids with autism. Everyone else just loves it. They think it's fun. Kids with Down syndrome, oh my God, they just think that it's the most hysterical thing in the world. They don't need it. Our kids with autism need to have that representation of the words coming out of a mouth. It's really important for them.
Well, interestingly, more typically developing kids do now, due to the pandemic.
Yeah, and now everyone needs it.
One of the things that back to that Lois was alluding to, and that answer your question is, well, why did we make it this way? Well, because it uses video modeling, and video modeling has probably some of the most solid evidence as an effective instructional tool. I mean, whether it's for autism or for someone else. I mean, I'll take a crazy example. MMA, so a light heavyweight champion, John Jones in MMA, he learned how to do all these crazy, unusual moves just by watching YouTube. So he was which is a form of video modeling. If you watch, I don't know if you've been watching the Olympics. If you've seen what the slopeside skiing, it's insane. People are watching videos and they can break things down in slow motion. They can repeat it. They can watch it over and over. And so that's one of the powers of video modeling, is because it plays into your natural learning mechanisms that all human beings have. It was like when Lois was mentioning, hey, when you're watching the facial expressions, did you find yourself copying them? And I mean, I did. It was just a passive thing. I'm smiling or frowning, and it's because you have this learning mechanism, this social learning mechanism, which is really incredible, that whether you have autism or not, that when you see someone do something, your brain lights up in those particular areas in your motor strip as if you were doing it, which primes you to be able to execute the task. So one of the things that we did is, so we have this highly accurate model of speech and facial expressions. But additionally, the UX and UI system, and it also integrates short videos, like what Justin was saying. So like the folder navigation system, that we can embed videos, and so we can take short videos to teach abstract words. Because if I were to ask you, like, well, show me a picture of again, you're like, I mean, what is it? What is the picture of again? There really isn't one. It's context based. So what we can do is we can show a picture of, like, maybe a student on a swing, getting on the swing, it stops, and then if they hit the word again, the word pops up again, the avatar says again, and the video will show example of again. You can make 20 versions of again or 50 versions of again based, I mean, and this is how we set the app up. So you can have multiple exemplars of abstract concepts that are both modeled with video of, you know, maybe again on a, you know, who knows, like a merry-go-round or on a swing. But each time you can also see how the word is pronounced, and you can also see the text that's associated with it. So it stimulates, you know, associative learning mechanisms too. That's another thing human beings are good at. So we try to use a lot of this research that we've done over the years that we had, like Justin had mentioned, we had already developed with the first version, but we really polished it with this version of it, using the highly accurate speech movements and the facial expressions too.
Yeah, and I have to follow up with that regarding the highly accurate speech movements and the video modeling and the research we've been doing. We actually just completed a research project for the National Institutes of Health that showed if you could show just the mouth speaking and take out all the other distracting features of a face and just show the mouth, that the kids actually will attend to it and really start attempting to make speech and language sounds. So that is part of, we integrated that into part of this Inner Voice Unreal. I think we do have a picture of a close-up of the mouth. We could show that one. I forget which image it is. Let me see, I have it here. Yeah, that's figure 1. If we can show figure 1. We have 3 different magnifications, and this is our most magnified. You know, our research showed that kids really, they're not turned off by it. They love it. They get fascinated by it. And after they watch the mouth close up speak for a period of time, it could be, you know, a day, a week, they literally start then attending to other people's mouths as they speak. Yeah. It's almost like you showed them where the sounds were coming from and what they need to attend to when they hear speech and language. So this has been fascinating us for a while. And we were able to implement it here. So we're super proud of this feature. You can see down the, I guess that's the right-hand side, you have a ×1, ×2, ×3. Those are the different magnifications. And this is the strongest magnification so that the student can get right in there, see where the tongue and the lips and what all the articulators look like. So that we're really proud of this. And we hope, we've been using it in our clinic with great results. And, you know, our hope is that people, you know, just let their kids use this, let the kids speak like this. And it also helps look at the facial expressions a little closer too.
Yeah, and we had both of these. We had the mouth visible through VR and on tablets, and it didn't really matter. I mean, in fact, the kids on tablets, even though it was on a tablet, they would start looking at their parents' face more and trying to imitate words. It was really interesting. And that was actually a finding that we weren't thinking would have happened, is that we thought, okay, they'll start saying those particular words more. But what they really started doing is looking at mouths and then paying attention to, well, the source of where speech is coming from. And that's, I mean, imagine this. Imagine if someone said, hey, I want you to learn to play something complicated like sitar. I'm not going to show you how to play it, but here's the instrument. I mean, you're not going to get very far. You have to watch someone play the sitar in order to know, well, do I hold it like this? Or which way do I strum? Speech is no different, because if you don't see someone speak, you're really not going to learn how to speak. I don't know if anyone speaks Norwegian here, but probably none of us does, because we haven't had to and no one's modeled it for us, and we're not getting feedback on how well we're trying to imitate it.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool observation that you were finding them to start looking at their parents and looking at other faces to start mimicking that as well. Which is really cool, considering you were just saying that it's difficult for them to look at faces sometimes. So the fact it was encouraging them to do that further is really impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, we actually added, one of the videos we can show too is it's when you think about learning to speak or learning to use language, it's really hard to think about, well, how do you do this, or why do we do these things? Because if we're talking and we're talking about talking, I mean, this is a metalinguistic skill you're asking. I mean, it's very hard for most people to, explain how you say sounds or talk, or why do you talk. But learning to communicate through language, there are layers of things that you have to have in place, foundational learning skills. So the very first and most important skill is joint attention. That's your ability to look at something with another person and jointly look at attend to an event or an item or an object together with another person. And so what we did is, maybe we can show the video, is when you touch on the screen, the avatar's eyes and head follows where the pointing, where your pointing goes. And so what that is about is that is one of the first communication skills that children need to learn in order to know what words mean. So, because if I point to this, in the background right here, this microphone, if you've never seen that before, and I say microphone, now you know what it is. But if you've never heard that, if I just said microphone, you've never seen one, you wouldn't. And if I were pointing over here and said microphone, you'd think that's microphone. So first you have to learn that when you're pointing, you're talking about eye gaze. So it's called eye gaze triangulation. And rather than tell people all this, we just put this in as a passive feature so kids can point, and then you notice, whoa, he's watching my fingers. And the idea is that if they can notice it there, then they can watch other people in their natural. So that was the goal of this. Real simple.
You couldn't really see it, but he was responding to where a finger was on the iPad. So as you're moving your finger around your iPad or your phone, he's following it. We were unable to illustrate that there, but certainly got the eye movement. It was a little bit, yeah.
I think with the
Maybe
context.
We'll do that in the future if we get feedback,
absolutely.
we need to do that.
Well, I think with the context, it was pretty straightforward what was going on. So I think you're good there.
Right.
But so Justin, they were talking a little bit about how there were some challenges when it came to developing parts of this project here. Would you like to elaborate a little bit further on some of those things that were difficult and how you got through them?
Sure. So, I mean, as an application goes, that its target is to help. You want to make sure that you're helping. So you want to make sure that your application does everything in clear ways, and that the mistakes aren't made at kind of the key pillars of your experience. If one of those pillars has a little crack in it, then if it's something that's not primary, then it's fine. But if it's one of the primary pillars of the experience, such as the audio playback or the lip syncing or the navigation of the experience, then you're going to have problems. So some of the things that we research spiked over the course of this, we did, of course, have trouble with doing lots of experimental new things, but they all had solutions at the end of the day. One of which being, so we have a setup where the person types in whatever they want, gobbledygook or hello, and it goes up to the cloud, to Amazon services. And Amazon services does a bunch of neat stuff with it. It says, okay, I'm going to pass it along to Amazon Polly. I just realized I clapped right next to my microphone, so I apologize, everyone. It goes up to Amazon Polly, light tap. It goes up to Amazon Polly. Polly says, hey, buddy, I see that you want to say hello, and you want to say it with Justin's voice. I think Justin actually is like the little boy character. So with Justin's voice, and you want it to be at this pitch, this volume, and learning all the proper API calls to perform that was one research spike. And then after getting it back, putting it into the system, the next big research spike was having all that stuff feed through. When I say stuff, I mean the response from Polly, Amazon's speech to text to speech system, is when it gets there, it's in the format of visemes, a list of visemes. So like oo, ah, e, o, but as a, e, I, o, u as letters and timestamps. So getting the letters and the timestamps to be sorted out and then blended over time in conjunction with an audio file that also comes back to play at the same time, so that everything looks right with the voice syncing all over a network, all with a bunch of different avatars with a bunch of different face types. That's probably the primary, most important hurdle that we had to cross in order to have a successful product. Because if you don't have a good lip synced character for an application that's teaching a person how to do lip shapes,
right.
I can see the problem there. Yeah.
So that was probably the I don't know if it was the most difficult problem that we had over the course of it. A lot of it was like upgrading to this certain version of Android makes these certain tablets stop working, like that type of weird stuff. That's just Android stuff. Whatever, get out of here. But in terms of like actual meaningful difficulties that required some interesting research, definitely the lip syncing, getting that content to come through, getting it all synced up, looking good, and making sure the person's teeth weren't like popping out of the face at certain points, and as I said before, massaging the character until they kind of did exactly what you want at different times. Because we did certainly have lots of like, oh, that's a little funky. And one of the biggest difficulties we actually had to work closely with iTherapy on this one, was sometimes the technology just isn't quite there yet. So even though Amazon has a Polly system, and it is, we are able to send up certain words or certain syllables like A, E, I, O, U, it wasn't designed. That system was designed for like a chatbot. It wasn't designed as a therapy product. So when it comes back, you get things like A, E, I, E, O instead of A, E, I, O, U. That's a bad example because you would have definitely gotten O. But a lot of the visemes that we were asking for didn't quite come back the way we expected it. So the sound wouldn't be quite right. So you have to do like, instead of just saying, this is the viseme I want O, you actually have to spell out something so that it like tricks the system into giving you what you want, and then creating a substitution system when the person types something. Whenever they type this, actually just replace it with this like weird hacky thing that will get what you want back from the system, because the system wasn't made to give you this stuff. So that was probably one of the bigger challenges that we had to overcome at Alara, using the input from iTherapy for getting the inner voice characters to say the right things in the right ways with the right mouth shapes.
Yeah.
And that was so important. I mean, when we say, oh, well, a couple things aren't there. I mean, it's when around 99% accurate. I mean, it's pretty accurate. And it's particularly the one piece that he's talking about is it's actually for literacy development, where you touch it. We have an alphabet feature where you touch, you can just touch a letter and it says A, B, C. So it identifying the letters. But the thing that's kind of counterintuitive about that is that if you teach only the names of letters, it won't help you use the alphabet. So, because I mean, if that were the case, and if you say the word cat, you would say it as C-A-T, so you have to actually, we have one where you identify the letters, and then the others where it's a phonics exercise, where when you touch the letter, it says short A, so it says A instead of A, and so then that way they can touch these individual buttons, and then it will show a one-to-one correspondence with. And so you touch the letter F, then it will make the sound. So you'll see what it looks like to make the sound, and you'll hear what it sounds like, and then you can segment words, which is it's something called phonemic awareness, which is a piece of which is something that you help teach people who have dyslexia or some other, just maybe some delays in reading. Everyone has to learn some amount of phonemic awareness. So getting that feature in place was a lot of backs and forth, kind of like, well, I guess we can fudge it, but it's still very accurate. It still shows that when you touch a letter, it will make the sound, not just identify it. But we also have that feature where you can identify it too, because that's also an important piece. But it was, it looks easy. It was not so easy.
How it tends to go with development.
We went so far as to contact Amazon to see if they could change it for us. They weren't very keen on that, but we contacted them.
There was like two sounds. We said, "Can you just this two sounds?" But so we made it work.
Well, if you guys are open to it, I think this would be a good time to hop into some of the questions we've got from chat so far. Sure. Awesome. Sure. So let's see here. The main Stark was wondering, have you had any testing with ABA therapists, and have you found that there are positive reinforcement features?
We're all.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was going to say we are all speech language pathologists. We would love an ABA therapist to use it. We've been in contact with some. This is all we just now got it finished and on the Google Play Store. But it does have reinforcement features, absolutely. And come to find out, we don't really need them. Kids love to just do it. They really do want to learn. And once they realize that they can do something and they don't always need you there showing them, telling them, prompting them, they do it. So even though we put those in, they're not that necessary, we found.
What are some of those features?
We have some stars, and we have some challenges that you can gain some points and some stars and things like that. They're fun, and it's what you would expect on a typical kind of a gamification educational product. Again, we haven't really found those to be quite so necessary for our kids. So,
but it is. It's like, I think let's say if you were to use it in ABA therapy, like you want a child to learn some keywords, you can set up these challenges, and it uses association learning, where you're like, okay, here's the target word, here are some distractors, and then how can you identify the target word? When you do, it says good job, or there's stars, and so there is that piece, but. In terms of how you would use it in a therapy session in an ABA, it would depend, because it's a tool. It's sort of like this. I mean, what do you use a hammer for? A lot of things. Same thing with a wrench. I mean, you use it to build things. So it's a tool that's used to build language. So there are a lot of ways you can use it, and it's open-ended too. And then here's one of the ways that can be beneficial for ABA therapy is it's made so that you're not going to get satiation from it very easily, because you can put literally limitless words and in limitless videos, and you can change the avatars almost infinitely. I mean, there's how many degrees of freedom for changing the avatars? It's a lot. So those things are a piece of ABA is what components are in there to avoid satiation, so it can be used as a tool. There are quite a few of them in there.
Yeah, so you're saying that while there are game-like features within it, the users seem more attracted to the sandbox style features, the kind of simulation experience where they can just kind of play around and experiment and see what happens.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even use that as my reinforcer. So it's how do you want to use it? What do you want to do? what are we doing today? And it, like Matthew said, it's a tool. It can be used many different ways.
Very
And
cool.
if they are playing around with it open-endedly, what are they doing? They're learning speech and language. So you're like, it's sort of a trick. Here, play with this, and then so as a result, they're learning speech and language and literacy skills. So it's that's another deliberate thing we did.
Tricking kids into learning. I'm down for that.
Works with adults too.
Yeah, true. How did you decide on the name? Inner Voice.
Wow, Inner Voice. We've had that for maybe 10 years now, 9-10 years. And it came from a book I read from Carly Fleischman, who is nonverbal. She's a young adult now, and she was nonverbal, I think, until she got into her preteens, and then she got a tummy ache, and she went over to her dad's computer and put, and these aren't the exact words, but something like "hurt, help." She typed them out, and from that day, they started working on typing, and they realized that she does have words. A lot of kids who are nonverbal are also considered to be low cognition. And anyway, she started typing, and she says, that is her inner voice. And then I read another book from another nonverbal individual who, again, referred to their typing or their communication skills as their inner voice, because they don't have, an expressive outer voice. So they say this is their inner voice is coming out. So I'm like, well, this is perfect. This will be Inner Voice.
And one of the things that I wanted to add to it too is we, if you haven't noticed, we make a lot of references to music. And the thing about why we're so interesting to when we started learning about these individuals who can write books, they can communicate, do interviews using typing, is musicians are very similar. Because if you had given Frank Sinatra an oboe, it'd sound like he doesn't know any music at all. So I mean, he wouldn't be able to do anything on that. So that's not his instrument. His instrument is singing. A lot for a lot of people who may not communicate verbally, they can access language through a different medium. Because I think it's we often associate speech with language. Speech is just one way to produce language, just like a trumpet is very different from a piano. But they can both express music. Music has rules and constraints, such, and because there's a big difference between music and just random noise. There's a big difference between linguistic symbol-based communication and then just randomly handing people icons. And so one of the things that we really liked about the inner voice concept is it really points that out. And there are more and more people who are coming out who are using typing to communicate, not touching icons and handing icons, but actually learning the motor planning associated with, maybe they hunt and peck, it doesn't matter. They can still create novel utterances using a combination of letters, which is something we believe is really important to teach, either talking or typing. So we kind of have a symbolic reference to that, I guess, in the name.
I love that. I love that so much. That's awesome. Now, for Justin, I saw you answer this question in chat too, but I thought maybe we could talk about it a little bit further as well. There was the question of if the app requires internet access to function.
Yes. So Amazon services, at least as far as I've researched, do require online connectivity for these sorts of applications to work. So having offline features, I think last time we kind of looked into the Microsoft Azure cognitive services. If we were to transition to something like that, they do have an offline mode at the cost of you'd need like another 20, 25 gigabytes of available space on your device whenever you download the application. So there are ways to have offline services available, but not currently in the product as it stands.
That makes sense.
This is one of our future iterations, updates, because it's important to be able to have the text-to-speech when you're not connected to Wi-Fi. Currently, because we are Amazon, we do have to be connected to Wi-Fi. Our Polly doesn't answer. Polly is the Amazon text-to-speech. So yeah, that is on our wish list for sure. That's number one, because kids riding around in the back of their mom's car, they don't get the text to speech. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But now with 5G coming, we're hopeful.
Yeah, I think I think that's a workaround. I mean, that there are,
Yeah.
I think more and more apps are relying on cloud-based services. So I don't think it's wildly different, but like we were saying, it would be nice at some point to have it, at least the speech to text features be native to the device.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see what all we've got in here. Oh, that's an interesting one. What countries is your app currently available in, and are there any plans to potentially expand that in the future?
Well, right now it's available worldwide. Both versions of InnerVoice available worldwide. Currently, we do not have only English-speaking voices on InnerVoice Unreal. So
yes, though it should be noted.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, you first.
Oh, yeah. Our plan is to do another one, but it's there's a whole set of things to different Vizemes, different phonemes, and so
right.
And I was just
since we are
add,
matching very closely the sounds to the mouth movements, it's a whole nother production, which is fine. We don't mind doing it. Not at all. This is just our first iteration. It's there. It's English speaking because that's what we know best.
Yeah. And
I was just going to add for you developers out there, I'm looking out at you streamers. Amazon does have different languages available in its Poly system, so it is very possible to do these changes. It's just a matter of in Unreal, you would use the UI libraries that they have so that you could quickly swap out the text with the options. So the same options would need to say opciones and stuff like that, depending on the language you pick. So you can do those swap outs. You can even do swap outs with textures if it's like iconography that's image based. And then when it goes up to Amazon, you can also specify the language. I believe you can specify the language based on the person you're, like how I said Justin is the little boy earlier. I believe you can also specify different language speakers based on their names. I don't know if you need to specifically say I need Spanish or whatever. I think the person's name implies the language that it's going to be. And if anybody has questions about that, I'm happy to field that stuff. That's the bread and butter.
Awesome. For the expressions that you guys have all set up, there was a question asking if the expressions differ at all based on perceived gender. They could see how, for some questioning kids, that might be kind of an interesting point for them.
Yeah, we actually do have a gender neutral avatar on there, so available. So I mean, we have kind of a neutral looking child, and then a female child, and then adult and male, and they do each avatar's facial expressions were made to be able to, like as Justin was mentioning earlier, we targeted each face shape and tried to make sure that we used the system as best we could to imitate the individual muscle movements for each face. So, I mean, depending on the face shape, we modified some of the facial expression or the muscle movements. So, I guess the answer is yes, but it was more about face shape.
Sure. Yeah. Very cool. Have you come across any techniques to recognize and reduce hyperactive states?
I guess, what do they mean by that?
I don't know.
That's a,
well,
you could do a 2-hour episode on that, I guess.
What we can do, Tina, is within InnerVoice, we create what we call social stories, which is a evidence-based technique to help someone work through an episode like that. So you would create little videos, whether they're of the specific child or an adult, and you'd walk them through a social story on each video. Like when I'm in a large group of people, and you might show a large group of people, I can feel my heart rate starting to increase and I start to get anxious. But what I'm going to do is take some deep breaths. So you can walk them through these social stories, or their avatar can, with specific pictures. And that helps preempt or helps them learn strategies that when they do get in a state, they can think, okay, I've already been through this. I know what to do. I'm going to take my breaths. I'm going to get a drink of water. Whatever the strategies are, they already know what to do. And those social stories we found are being very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's an awesome
answer.
feature.
Yeah,
that's a
and we
very,
put
very
facial
cool one.
expressions to them too. Like you could actually make the person look stressed or anxious, with the facial expressions, and or and again, it's therapist specific. They might have their own specific words that they go to in that moment or before the moment's happening. So.
Yeah, because I mean, like reducing hyperactivity. I mean, if you're that's there are a giant number of things to look at, because you would want to look at, like, well, I guess you could use some behavior analysis. I mean, what happened first? What is the behavior the person's exhibiting? What's the consequence? What's the function of the hyperactivity? Is it escape? Is it access? Is it attention? Is it a response to internal stimuli? I mean, some people are hyper. I'm a hyper person, so I don't know why, I just am. So lots of people are like that. So you would have to really break down, well, what is the reason for the hyperactivity? And I'd say Lois's answer is one of the best, is using video modeling in a sequential way, and then trying to come up with strategies for emotional regulation and context.
Yeah, I'm not over this feature that you're talking about. I didn't even know that was a thing, because that's like an entirely different aspect of teaching tools right there in and of itself, is presenting them potential situations before they're actually in it, so that they can have an understanding of how to approach it before it even happens. That's incredible.
Yeah, we'll do that a lot around like the holidays, when maybe your family's going to have a lot of relatives over that only come over once a year. So we'll put pictures of all the relatives in there, and say, Grandma's going to be here. You call her Grandma, and just go over the basic things. And, when she gets here, I'm going to, stay in the room and say, hi, Grandma. Because most kids will just literally run to their own rooms and shut the door because they didn't expect that. So if we could give them what to expect with pictures and videos, and they go through it. And believe it or not, these, we call them video stories, because social stories is someone else's term. So if you give them these video stories, they love them, and they'll watch them again and again and again. And then they start reciting with their avatars the words in the social stories. It's really kind of incredible. And again, it's a kind of an unexpected little happy thing that happens, because as they're reciting, they're learning. And we don't have to say, now sit there and talk with your avatar. They just do it. And it's pretty amazing. Matthew has a lot of videotape of some little kids in school doing it, because I didn't believe him. So he says, no, I'm going to show you. This is when I first came out. So now we just notice all of our kids doing that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll give you if someone, because I'll go back to the person's question. Like, okay, let's say you have a child who's, they get hyperactive about maybe some kind of transition to use the restroom. So before you're going to use the restroom, I'm thinking of a preschool class I worked in. We would show an avatar. It could be their face. It could be something, or maybe one of ours. It could be the Epic guys. And then they have a series of videos, and it says, when the teacher opens the door, I will wait. And then it'll show a video of them waiting, because you always show them doing the thing that you want, rather than say, sit in your chair. And you film them doing the thing you want first, so I will wait, you know. And then when the teacher says go to the restroom, I will go into the restroom and use, or whatever it is. But you set it up in a sequence, and then they know what to expect. The cool thing about that, back to the video modeling, is it can activate some executive functioning skills, which is your ability to kind of predict what's going to happen in the future. And children naturally don't, that part of their brain is not developed really until about 25. So expecting little kids to be able to be like, okay, just wait for 2 hours and then we'll go to the amusement park. I mean, that's why it's hard for them, because they don't yet have that part of their brain developed. And so if you have some developmental challenges, that can be even harder. So making it tangible by having videos of them doing the thing that you want, that possibly could help with hyperactivity, but there is no silver bullet to addressing hyperactivity because it's very complicated. I think
Tina on mute?
Yeah, she may be muted.
Wow. Rookie mistake, guys.
Classic.
Everyone does it once. I do it like 6 times in a conference. So,
all right, everybody gets 5 free seconds of roasting me for that. Unacceptable. So anyway, as I was trying to say, a question did come up of, do you think this would also be really helpful in practicing conflict resolution as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, you can use the same video stories. Depending who the conflict is with, you get their pictures, you get videos. When I see this person walk in the room, I start to feel this way, but what I should do is, here's the problem, here's what should happen, and you video it out. And it can be as specific or in general as you want it to be, because essentially you can add endless pictures, endless videos, and then the avatar speaks it to you, so you can learn conflict. Matter of fact, a lot of our kids who are more on the Asperger's end of the spectrum, conflict resolution is a goal, because they get into conflicts quite often, just because of misunderstandings. And so that is something that we do. And walking through those kinds of conflicts, whether it be, with certain people, certain types of situations, going somewhere with mom, with whoever it is, can be worked through by just showing the appropriate things to do, how to resolve it before it starts.
I would even say too, I mean, like you can, with the avatars, we have the 6 universal emotions on there, and you could say like, well, if I say something that upsets someone, their eyebrows are going to go down, and their face, their teeth are going to be like, yeah. So when they look that way, I will stop talking or change the subject. I mean, so you can, so you can show what people might look like in a conflict, and or we also use like social behavior maps. We'll say like, when I, when I open the door instead of using conflict, I'll give an example of something you want people to do. So when I'm with my grandma and I open the door for her, she feels, and then you could show the avatar, just happy. So when she's happy, she takes me for ice cream. I feel, how do you feel? And then ask him, how do you feel? Happy. What does it look like? Show me. You could show the avatar. They can imitate it. Should I open the door for grandma? Yes or no? Yes. Why? Because I feel happy and so does she. So it's like, it's very easy to model that stuff. And I mean, we've done that trillions of times with lots of different students. Usually that's for a little bit older kids, as Lois was saying.
Yeah, that's awesome. There was a question that came up asking if you can customize the icons at all with personal photos for PEC's type system.
Yes, you can currently. Oh.
Nope.
Go ahead, Justin.
You're the one who did that.
Everyone speak at the same time, actually. Let's 1, 2. Yes, you can customize the images inside of the application. You can select any photo from your library, take new ones, could make it a video, anything you want. If you were speaking more to our PEC icons specifically supported, unless you've already saved them in the library, your photo library, you can either choose a photo from your album, or you can select a series of preordained iconography, which are just a bunch of emojis and that type of thing that help specify things. I don't think PECs are already in the system, but you can download them and use them on your own for sure.
So regarding that question, I do want to make one point, is that traditionally on these types of devices, you're going to see a lot of pictures, what we call icons and symbols, which there's some arrows, some stick people, things that are not used in the community in general. So Matthew, that has always been a problem for me, because I'm teaching a child that, in Matthew's point earlier, was literally an arrow pointing to, I think, a table or something. And it had no reality to what the word really was. And we thought, well, what can we use that everyone else uses and at least has a little bit of context to what it really is? And so we came up with emojis. We put emojis in our inner voice rather than the symbols and icons, because everyone uses them. So if they learned that, this particular emoji means go outside or the park or the swimming pool, everyone else is doing the same thing. So they can get on their mom's phone or whatever, any device they pick up, you're going to see those emojis and they're capable of using it. Where the other set, the more traditional, you only see it on the devices that they use in school and in their homes, and not in the community at large. So we thought it was really important to make everything as universal as possible. So again, you'll see emojis and the ability to take pictures and videos.
And I want to add to that too, is that we did some experimentation because we were thinking, well, are we wrong about this? So we used an optical character recognition system to just be like, well, I mean, I'm sure Microsoft Azure's system will be able to recognize these icons. So we just took pictures of typical icons used, a lot of speech therapists or maybe behaviorists use. And we thought, well, will it know that 3 arrows, pointing to the right next to a line mean again? And it would say, that's exactly what it said, 3 arrows next to a line, or it would show some other thing that was supposed to represent more. It would be like a pile of circles. And so what we found is that taking these abstract icons that are not universal, they're kind of idiosyncratic to the companies that make them. It creates semantic noise. So meaning that it basically interferes with the semantic signal of the stimulus, if you want to be super technical about it. Because if you want them to learn the word again, and the word again exists in speech and in text, not in hieroglyphs, that if you want people to use this and be understood by others, because that's a function of language, because in order for us to understand each other, we have to use the same stuff. Because if I have new thoughts and make up new words and sounds, you won't understand me. So we're trying to get people to use universal and then combinable symbols, which are not hieroglyphs or pictographs. They are actually written words and spoken words. And then if you are using emoji or symbols, we tried to make them look like the ones everyone else was going to recognize as well, which is why we use the Twitter emojis, because literally I think billions of people are using them now. So that's why we arrived at that.
Yeah,
but you can take a picture of your symbols that you have, and then put those on the button if you want. So you can do that too.
Awesome. Very good level of customization available in it from the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. Well, let me go through, see what else we've got going on in here. Oh, there was, this is more for me, honestly. This is a selfish question. But I was curious if you guys had anything that was kind of supplementary to your application as well? Do you have anything like curriculas or teaching materials, anything that kind of works alongside the app as well?
We do have what they call low tech that goes along with it. So you have this high tech on your pad or your phone, and it's the application. And then we do have low tech, which are basically placemats or printed out materials that you can put anywhere else, just in case you don't have your pad or your phone with you. The curriculum is, we kind of just follow the best practices and the best practices for learning AAC and or speech language. So the curriculum is the goal. We don't have a very specific open it up and this is the first thing you do, this is the first lesson you learn. It is designed, again, as a tool to help you with those goals and lessons. It is not the curriculum itself.
Very cool. And would they be able to find access to that stuff in the same place they find your app? Would that be on your local website?
The low tech would be on our website, which is itherapyllc.com.
Very cool. Got to get that plug in there.
Gotta get it in there. And we're coming out with more and more of the supplemental materials. Like say you were drinking in a cup, and on this cup there were pictures of more or water or juice. So anything that pertains to drinking in context would be on the cup. So we're coming up with those kinds of materials, because in context is probably the most powerful way to ask for something. Like right now, as I'm drinking water and I'm empty and I need more water, I wouldn't be talking about shampoo. So when you give a child a communication board with every word in the world on it and it's out of context, and that's typically, unfortunately, sometimes I've seen that quite a bit as we're teaching kids. We're teaching them every word in the world as they're sitting at the table. And what they really want is more water because their cup's empty. So right here, you have your choices, more water, no, thank you, ice, whatever it is. So we're coming up with those tools also. So we're not only doing like the very high tech, which is the Inner Voice Unreal, but we're going also with the more practical, in context, low tech, so that there's communication everywhere. You're learning it everywhere. And what you see on here matches what you're going to see on here. But right now we have.
Actually, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say we added.
Right now
that's
we
All right, Matthew, we'll go with you.
We added those things that Lois is saying into the UX UI system too, that you can actually just narrow down. Let's say if you're just trying to teach someone in context how to how to say more, or the word drink. And then I guess this would be a principle of behavioral analysis, because it sounded like someone was interested in this, we use errorless learning. So if you create a situation where the child run out of a drink, and then the only button available is drink, and then they push drink and it says drink, and you give them a drink, it's a one-to-one correspondence with and in context, so they don't have to search for shampoo, fork, canoe, and every single word in the English language. It's just right there, so it can work in that moment.
Very cool. Let's see if we've got anything else popping up in chat. While we wait on that, I'm going to give them a second, type, and get some stuff in there. I want to come back to the tech side of things a little bit further. Justin, if you would like to, I'd actually like to discuss the blend shapes that you were talking about a little bit further. Okay, you're right. You know what?
Yeah,
we'll move on. So the other question.
So what about them? Or just in general, how we did it?
Yeah, we'll just start in general, and then we can get more specific if something pops up.
Sure. So the blend shapes in Inner Voice are a series of face shapes that represent mouth movements and emotions. So in order to blend between them, I usually use a blend shape system. in Unreal, you animate characters generally through an animation blueprint system, and which allows you to kind of visualize from a designer perspective how different animation poses interact with one another. And basically what we do is we do an additive blend of all the shapes that we need together and end up with a final pose that's happy plus, those types of things. You're adding together all the face shapes that you need so you can have a final pose product that feeds into the exhibited pose by the character in the game. So since all the characters do share a similar skeleton and setup, all of them have a very similar blend shape setup as well. So the high level look at the blend shapes is one, we created one that represents each general phoneme that's needed based on, if you look up like phoneme pictures, you always see like these crazy grids of like the letter and then like a picture of like just a really close picture of a person's mouth, like and you see like all these pictures, and basically had our artists match what those are, and then we show them to eye therapy, and eye therapy says, the lip should be curved a little differently. We take those changes into account. We then have Polly send back all the phonemes from a particular conversation so that I can say, okay, over time I should be 30% oof, 20% because I'm going wah. I'm like almost into the but not quite yet, kind of deciding how to blend from one to the other. And then at the same time, blending in some percentage of emotion based on the left-hand side has like a bunch of emojis that represent emotions, which ones you have currently selected. And then originally just hoping that no teeth pop through and eyeballs pop out and stuff. But as we got toward the end of the product, we did fortunately hammer out all this funkiness.
All those fun little animation morph target quirks for sure. Did you use any morph targets for emotion, or?
Given that I am, so the art team may very well have used morph targets. I was the good boy that touched the animation blueprint and connected everything together after they did all the good stuff. I'm just looking up an image of morph targets real quick to see if I'm thinking of it properly.
No worries.
I believe they did theirs within other systems. I'm just reading here. I'm
coming in with the hard questions.
So by morph targets, are you referring to like transform bones and stuff? Or are you referring to the high level morph target system where you're like actually doing the modeling inside of Unreal?
I was talking about the higher level one, but
okay, yeah. So I don't believe we did our modeling inside of Unreal directly for those parts. I could be wrong, but we did do the transform bone modifications. Yeah, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about the additive morph targets. But I think they were done kind of post hoc, not like within the engine for the actual creation of them. I could very well be wrong, and I'm sure I'll see a Discord message soon saying, "Hey, Justin, hey, check yourself before you wreck yourself." But we'll see. To the best of my knowledge, I believe that we did not use morph targets within Unreal.
Very cool. I can only imagine how robust the blueprint was for.
He's a big boy.
I can only imagine.
We did use, to make it a little more sane, we did use, I'm trying to remember the name for them. Maybe somebody on your side can help. When you do poses, you can actually feed them into like a pose variable and like put it over here. So your main pose thing just has a single node feeding into it and then another single node feeding into it instead of having the whole tree right there. We were able to kind of segment each of the poses, which I do always recommend doing, and then blending together later so that your final pose is kind of easy to look at. And then if you want to know more, you click it and it jumps over to the whole saved pose, cached pose. Cached pose sounds right.
Yeah.
I believe we used a cached pose system so that it wasn't totally gross to look at all the time. You could have everything kind of off to the sides. If you wanted to see it, you could, but you could at least just preview, okay, all my cached poses of oohs, ahs blend together in a single page, because I know that blueprints can get pretty hairy if you don't kind of wrangle it together every once in a while.
Yeah, it can be a lot of spaghetti with no rhyme or reason pretty quickly. Yeah, so in other words, what you're saying is organization is very helpful in cases like this.
Yes, organization is always helpful. We do actually, even in our team, have like specific rule sets for when we do blueprint development. We have like pictures of like stop and goes, like do this, don't do this, that we just hand out to people whenever they start, because they're easy mistakes to make, because I just want to connect these two things, but always go in one direction. Don't like the band, go in one direction, but don't like cross streams. If you have a true false statement where true is up and false is down, don't like flip your directionality, so you have streamed crosses from the like the true goes down and the false goes up. It's always be consistent. All those types of rules are things that we do employ for that sanity purpose, including our animation blueprints, so that other people
We're
pop
going to
in.
make you a social story for that.
Yeah, social story.
Yeah, you can make one of those on Inner Voice.
Just don't look behind this green screen. I promise my office is organized. In the very same way.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's a good point. Making sure that your blueprints are readable for anybody else on the team who might have to open them up later and poke around in there.
Or you, when you look at it in 2 months and you've been raising a 6-month-old baby and you've forgotten everything about how anything works. It's always good to have a little self-oriented documentation based on the design.
Lots of comments. And lots of comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me go through and make sure I didn't miss any burning questions in here from chat. In the meantime, there is one that did pop up that I thought was kind of curious. It comes off a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, how you said that part of why you swapped over to the slightly more cartoonish avatars was to diverge a little bit further from the uncanny valley issue that was cropping up with the pictures. So the question was, besides that, have there been any other positive outcomes that you have found so far of specifically using something that is a little bit less realistic in how it looks, but more realistic in how it functions?
I haven't seen a big difference. Again, I'm going to go back to it depends on how you want to use it. Like if I'm really working on articulation or motor speech, I'm going to go straight to the Inner Voice Unreal. If I'm working more on getting attention, because we can animate anything on Inner Voice, the iOS version. We could take a picture of a cereal box and animate it. Matthew will draw a little face or have a student draw a face on a whiteboard, and we can animate that. So that really draws in kids' attention. However, again, the motor speech isn't there and the micro expressions aren't there. So it's what you're working on in that moment is what I choose to use. And quite literally, what do I have, my Android or my iOS in my hand? What's charged right now?
Sure.
So what's available? A lot of folks have Androids. They don't have the ability to choose. So we wanted to include as much that crossed over as we could. And we've done that. But again, they're kind of two different they target two different kind of areas that we're working on, but the crossover
Yeah.
still is pretty big. I'd say there's at least 70 to 80% crossover, except for the very precise articulation and the very precise micro expressions. And the literacy point. We don't have you can program in your own literacy tools in the original Inner Voice, but this one has them built in because that's really important. Literacy is huge, huge, huge. And a lot of kids just aren't learning to read these days. Again, very topical. We ended up making it just for our population, and it ended up being for everybody now because kids just aren't learning to read.
Yeah, and this is coming from that we're working with school districts now. That I mean, it's been the pandemic was hard on literacy skill development all over the country. So I guess that's one of the benefits of using the less realistic version at this point is because it does have that highly thought out literacy feature, like Lois was saying.
Yeah. And as you yourself brought up before, Matthew, it was very timely for the release of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happened to align. I mean, it's not like we wanted it to. I mean, it'd be
Sure.
better if we didn't have this problem. So, but I'm glad it's like, hey, you know, if something breaks on your house, it's great to have a toolbox ready to fix it, right? So it's kind of like, I guess you can think of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is another question in here about avatars, which I think is kind of a fun one, actually. Is there currently any features, or are there any features planned in the future to add maybe little quirks or slight imperfections to the avatars? Or do you intend to just keep them kind of as simplified as you can?
No, we
They
would
have
love
them
to
now,
get.
right?
Yeah,
They have them now.
they have
Yeah, they have
freckles
little
and
face splotches and, you know, little imperfections. But I mean, I think that was, but, you know, maybe, but we tried to do that even now.
sometimes. I mean, our idea also is we don't want to have people focusing on a mole, so to speak, or a crooked tooth, because our kids on the spectrum will do that. If a hair is out of place, they're going to be looking at the hair and not what you want them attending to. So we really do kind of need to make it neutral as possible. But I've seen some of your new Unreal Humans, and oh my God, those guys are amazing. I would love to make it more real. But again, the distractions are hard for our kids on the spectrum to look past that because they tend to hyper focus on one. You know, I commented on your beautiful necklace. If I were maybe a child on autism, I might be focusing on that, and you know, it would take my focus away from, you know, watching you and the things that you said, because I'd be hyper focusing on that necklace. So same with them. So we have to kind of not do too much imperfections.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. But you heard it here first, folks. Next rendition of Inner Voice is Inner Voice Metahumans. Okay,
Okay. I'd like to see those run on the phone.
That is a great idea, by the way, because I'm thinking when you mentioned that, because we're only right now in terms of nonverbal communication, we're focusing on the face because I mean because we want people to start with foundational skills. But then if you have a whole body, these are some things we've talked about, Lois and I, in the past, kind of already have some designs for this. Like how do people's bodies look when they feel certain ways? You know, I mean, like if your hands are at your side, or if your feet are pointing out the door, what does that mean when they're talking to you? Does that mean they want to keep talking, or they want you to start the So something like that MetaHumans feature would be awesome for that kind of stuff, for just the nonverbal communication piece.
Yeah,
that would be interesting to see a kind of a full body experience as well.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, unless you guys have any other further points that you would like to talk about and elaborate on, I think that was.
I did see a question from Push about the games as therapy, and having something like It Takes Two as an example for making games that look at different topics that could be used in therapy settings. And while I am not a therapist, But I have done serious game development, serious game research, both past and present, and there are definitely two approaches you can take: the sandbox approach with like efficacious strategies of testing, like what is inside of Inner Voice. But if you're interested, if that particular user or other users in general, if they're interested in how games could be developed to combat serious issues, like they mentioned specifically bullying, but I've seen it combat how does McDonald's make a hamburger for $1. There's a game that's about how you make a hamburger for $1. It's called the McDonald's game, actually. But there's if, almost sarcastically, of course. But there are two topics that I'd recommend as future reading for y'all. One is Procedural Rhetoric, which is by Ian Bogost, where he talks a lot about how the process of playing a game is inherently educational, and you're learning something, whether or not it's an interesting content or not. You're learning something whenever you're playing a game. And how do you structure your experiences in a way to have your components of the system come together in a way that you derive meaning from it, and then however you derive meaning, like this is how McDonald's makes $1, or this is what a red Pikmin does. Both of those are only learned through interacting with a system, whether or not it's a game or it's an educational topic. The second book is James Paul G's How I Learned Literacy Playing Games. Let me double check the title. Playing Games G. I believe the full title, on what video games have to teach us about learning and literacy. If you are interested in those topics and how It Takes Two could be used in such a manner, then I would recommend. James Paul G was this 60-year-old linguist who saw his kid playing Pikmin. That's why I mentioned Pikmin before, and he said, that's weird. They learned how every color Pikmin did different complex behaviors better than they learned math in school after a year. And why is that? So his book kind of expounds on his experience getting into games at age 60, and like what he learned from looking at design in games and how that can influence educational content. So both of those authors, I think, would be good places for you to start if you're interested in doing that stuff. Asterisk, I am not a therapist. Do not take my advice for blah, blah, blah.
I did see someone say that they were wanting to see the example of the literacy features. I wonder if we could quickly play that, because I realized we didn't play that. That was in the chat.
Ah. Oh.
Very cool. Very, very cool feature. Honestly, I cannot commend you guys enough on your work on this app. I think it's incredible work that you've done. I think the motivation behind it and the research behind it is well thought, as well as very heartwarming. It comes from a place of just trying to help and make things better, which I think is so desperately needed during times right now. So I want to personally thank you for taking the time to make something like this, and not only make it as good as it can possibly be, but to make it accessible too. The fact that you went out of your way to make it affordable for families is really commendworthy. Not everybody can or will do that, and the fact that you went out of your way to make sure that was possible is incredibly commendable. So thank you for doing this. Seriously, it's awesome.
Well, we couldn't have done it without Epic and the whole Mega Grant program. You guys were awesome too. So thank you for, giving us the opportunity to do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, if anybody would like to reach out to you guys, either to learn more about your app or for anything like that, what's a good place that they can reach you?
Our website, that would be itherapyllc.com. We do have contact there, or you can just email us at either Lois at itherapyllc.com or Matthew at itherapyllc.com. We made it easy.
Yeah, it's not very hard.
Awesome. And for me, you're, of course, you might have seen my responses to some messages in Twitch. You can, of course, reach out to me on there through Professor JPAT if you have any specific questions or you're interested in specific things. Or if you want to see more about what Alara Systems does, feel free to navigate to alarasystems.com. They do animation, they do XR, and they primarily focus on Fortune 50 companies doing medical application style interaction, so they can do a lot of neat interactions within like different types of surgeries and that type of thing. So it's always I always invite people to check them out because they do great stuff. And alarasystems.com is the one, and Professor JPAT's me.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we've really appreciated working with them too. They've been terrific. So we couldn't recommend them enough ourselves.
It was an absolute match, right? Got the research and got the memes, put them together, come out with a great product at the end. Well,
thanks so much.
Absolutely. Now, you guys, thank you so much for being on here. Also, everybody in chat, you heard it there. If you want to reach out to any of them, feel free, right? If they've got further questions and stuff, you know how to get in contact. Please don't hesitate to do so. But thank you so much, genuinely, for taking the time to speak with us and our community today about this amazing technology that you have developed and the great motivations behind it. I'm very excited to see what iTherapy continues to do in the future. And thank you, everyone who came to watch our stream as well. Obviously, we wouldn't be here and couldn't do this without you. So thank you for coming. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on our YouTube channel and Twitch channel after the fact, Unreal Engine Official. Don't forget to keep up with us at Unreal Engine on all social media, as well as come say hi in our forums, where you can also get the latest news and find any links associated with what we talked about today, so you can look further to that yourself as well. But once again, thank you, all three of you, so much for coming. It was a pleasure having you on and speaking with you about this. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and or week and or month and or life. I hope it goes well. And for our viewers, of course, for our viewers, make sure you come back. Yes. And for our viewers, don't forget to come back for our next weekly show. Thank you, everyone. Bye.